I'm just going to be transparent. I was told that she had
Oh, we have that information. We have that.
okay.
already. So we know what that particular reason was. But I mean, you didn't have to handle it by breaking into her house and beating her up. I mean, you could have had a conversation with her and asked. I mean, you know what I mean? With those concerns, you could have gone to the health department in advance and gotten checked out, and you could have done lots of other things instead of kicking the door in, because you heard that. Yeah. And yeah, you could have used protection. And the other thing is, you found out that there wasn't anything.
Yeah.
You hadn't contracted anything. Maybe just could have avoided all of that by just getting checked out if you had concerns about it.
Well, that's a first out of the state of Connecticut. And look, some of you might say, hey, I might have done the same thing. I might have seen black too. But then you got to go back. You got to look at his long record of DV, take into account that there was a child in the house. He broke into the house. The initial charge was home invasion. He could have been facing a minimum of 10 years, up to 20 years, because the state of Connecticut does not mess around when it comes to home invasions due to the Cheshire case, which I've spoken about in the past. But here he is up for parole. And he actually, I think, is one of the more humble and soft-spoken parolees. He's also an equal opportunity fighter, so to speak. Most DV cases we see, they don't pick on people their own size, but he does. He actually has a handful of write-ups for fighting while in the DC, and frankly, I respect him a little bit more for that, only on the count that we are so often to seeing those who have these DV charges never picking on anyone their own size. But here we go. We'll watch this parole hearing. I'll unpack it with what details we have at the end.
My name is Parole Officer Logan. Today is Friday, March 28, 2025, and this is the hearing of the Connecticut Board of Pardons and Parole. The following board members are present this morning, and by stating their names on the record, certify they have reviewed all statutorily required documents and available for information in preparation of this hearing.
Nancy Turner, good morning.
Good morning, Robert Sazauskas.
Good morning, panel member Rodriguez.
Good morning.
Please state your name and inmate number for the record.
Gordon Piper, 435011.
This hearing is being conducted in consideration of the parole application for Gordon Piper, 435011. He is serving a sentence of 5 years, executed suspended after 2.5 years, followed by 3 years probation for burglary third. As of today, records reflect the parole eligibility date of September 18, 2024. There is no victim input in this case. There is an offender accountability plan for the offender. It has been reviewed and shows the offender has completed domestic violence and voices. Utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system, the offender's overall score falls within the high range of risk of recidivism. Mr. Piper, this is your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole. You may begin.
If you guys don't mind, I have a letter that I wrote. Do you mind if I read it?
Go right ahead.
Excuse me. I'm a little bit nervous, so pardon me if I mess up a little bit or anything. All right. First off, I want to thank the board for seeing me today, and the reasons I'm here before you today are due to my poor decisions and bad choices that I've made in the past. I stand here accountable for those past decisions. After being incarcerated for 21 months, I've came to realize that how I was thinking and acting was abnormal. However, during my incarceration, I've had the opportunity to take the program's Voices in Domestic Violence. And with the help of both of these programs, I was able to take a hard look within myself and came to the conclusions that I'm going to do better as a man, a father, and a productive citizen of the state of Connecticut. Throughout the course of the Voices program, I learned how my actions affected the victim of my crime. And I've also learned to consider the consequences of my actions, not only for me, but the people around me. For that, I'm ashamed of my past actions, and I'm remorseful for being that person in the past. Throughout the domestic violence program, I've learned how to think first and not let my anger dictate my actions. And I've learned that my anger is a choice. Like everyone else in the world, I only can choose what to do with my own anger. Also, during the domestic violence program, I came to the understanding that if I'm angry, I'm either afraid or I'm in pain. And I accept both of these feelings and know I can take a deeper look into them when I can only control myself. And I've learned to treat all people the same, no matter whether female or male. My goal is to go home and use everything I've learned through all my time being incarcerated to navigate through life and stay out of the prison system. I have 3 children that I want to give the best life possible so I can make sure that they never have to end up in the situations like the ones that I've put myself into. I have a release to-do list. Upon release, I have a job lined up for Dunkin' Donuts. And if that job does not hold up, my backup plan is to apply to a warehouse as in Bazzuto's or Macy's. I have a lot of experience painting and doing lawn care, so I'll be looking for a job in those areas also. If I were to be released on parole, I would do everything in my power to stay out of trouble and stay up. Excuse me, I gave it the word, to stay out of trouble with the help of my support system. And that's it.
All right, Mr. Piper, thanks for putting your thoughts on paper,
Thank you for hearing them.
providing us that information. I think we'll probably have some questions about what you just shared, and we also have questions that we prepared based on the documents that were available to us. After we're done asking you questions, then we will discuss your case and you'll have our decision this morning. Are you ready to proceed?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. We're going to start with questions from my colleague, Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Piper, for your opening statement. Appreciate it. You addressed some things briefly. But I have to be honest with you. I'm concerned, and although you've acknowledged like some understanding of your behavior, I'm concerned about your behavior. The charge is a burglary third, but in the process of that, you broke into a house, you beat up your girlfriend, you punched her. There was a lot of violence involved in that taking of what you took, the items that you took with you. It was not your first assault issue as well. You had a prior issue with assault, also a DV kind of situation where you had that assault as well. And I think in my reading of your documents, you talk about your anger and how angry you can get and how it impacts you. And I know that you've taken some programs. You shared about some of the programs that you've taken that you've learned. But what I found interesting was that you had 7 disciplinary reports, this incarceration. And 2 of them were after your programming, and they were for fighting. And they were right after your program. You finished your program in August, and you had 2 fighting tickets in September. And in your opening statement, you talked about, understanding how you need to control these things and how you learn how to do this. But that, for me, doesn't reflect that. And I realize that was a while back and you haven't had any tickets since then. But, I mean, it doesn't reflect that kind of thinking that you shared, that you learned. Can you tell me what the discrepancy is in that? Why that is that you didn't put in place the things that you learned, the skills that you learned to avoid those 2 major fighting tickets?
Okay. I'm going to start off by saying I take full accountability for partaking in those fights. And I'm not going to say that it was out of my control because I could have found a better way to deal with the fighting situations. But I don't know if on the paper you see that I finished the SRG program, and situations happened where I didn't want to do what somebody in the SRG program wanted me to do. And I guess for that, he had it out for me. I didn't initiate those fights, but I did partake in them. So I take full accountability for that. And my whole time being incarcerated, I did my time in the SRG program when I'll put my hands on anybody or catching any ticket. But I look at it like, I'm a grown man, so I have to take responsibility for my actions. But I can't control when somebody else wants to, put their hands on me or something like that. I really just feel like I was defending myself both times. If I got approved for the halfway, I wanted to go home. I don't, I wasn't trying to get into a fight to mess that up. I was just trying to get back to my kids. But I do take accountability. I could have did anything, or something, or anything else to avoid being, in that situation.
You don't feel you could have done something else?
No, I
Or
do.
you feel you could?
Yeah, I feel I could have.
Yeah.
I could have. I could have.
Yeah, I get that because you talked about in your opening statement about having learned how to handle, those kinds of situations, right? And my concern is that could happen on the outside, right? You could run to somebody on the outside and not be able to use, just kind of get to that place again where you feel you're not using those things. You didn't take anger management. It's
No,
right. It's on your OAP,
Yeah.
but you didn't take it. Is there something you think you still need to take?
I feel like throughout the anger, the domestic violence and the voices, I did learn some techniques to control my anger. So I can't really say that I do need it, but I feel like when I get into, if I would to be granted parole, I would still go for anger management. Because there are some stuff that I'm dealing with, not that has to do with anybody else, stuff that I'm dealing with internally that I feel like I should seek counseling for. That probably how do you say, contributes to my anger.
Have you attempted to try to get that kind of counseling while you're there?
Yeah, I haven't asked about another program that'll help, but I just don't feel like this. When I was in Osborne, I asked for a program that could help for me to talk to somebody about what I'm going through, and but I got moved around to other jails, and I didn't. Since I got moved around, I haven't asked again about it.
See. So you haven't asked about it since you've been there. That's what you're telling me.
Yeah.
You hear my concern, though, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
You also scored a 2 on your substance abuse. During the course of these events, were you using any kind of substances?
During the course of the events, oh, you mean
For the burglary third, huh?
Oh no. Other than smoking marijuana, I wasn't using any of the drugs. Or pills, prescription pain pills, like as in Percocets. I probably was using those during the time, but during the time of the crime, I don't think so.
So you weren't high during the time you committed this offense?
No, sir.
Which even concerns me more that you kind of had control of your normal thinking patterns and you weren't led by any being intoxicated or being high or any of that. So your anger is coming from some other places, which also concerns me. I mean, this is very difficult for me. We have to figure out whether you're suitable to be able to be released, right?
Yes.
And I have to really consider public safety in all of this, right? We have to consider public safety in all of this, and I'm feeling like you need to do a little bit more to kind of get a little bit more control of this, because the fact that you took the programs and a month later you got into a fight, and I understand that in the situation that you're in, those things can happen, but we have lots of cases that we hear where guys are kind of in similar situations and they find ways to, not find themselves in, what I mean, in that situation, creating fighting. And that's my concern. And I wanted you to kind of understand that. The other thing is that you were on probation when this happened. And that's another concern. You had 2 other unsuccessful bouts of violations of probation. And some of them were related to the previous offense and all of this.
Also an assault.
And also one was assault, right? Yeah, and although I heard what you had to say, and I do agree that you probably got some things from the programs that you did take, because it sounds to me like you did, learn some things about it. Somehow something didn't stick with you, and that I think I need to see addressed. And for me, I think you do need to take an anger management, probably before you come out, and you've got some time. You're there till November. I mean, I'm trying to figure out what makes sense in this particular situation. Yeah, the fact that you broke into this house, kicked the door in, and I mean, that was a really, I can't imagine that. That would, really break into my house and start punching me and take my stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about your support system on the outside.
My mother's my number one supporter. My mother's been by my side my whole life. Sometimes I haven't listened to her because I wanted to do my own thing when I was younger. I have older brothers and sisters that support me, and my mom's brother is a big supporter of me. He whenever I needed like help thinking or something like that, he helps me out. And my godfather, my
So
godfather
you have
helps me.
family. You have family on the outside.
Yes.
Your sisters already adults.
Yep.
Are they involved in relationships?
Yep. Yes.
How would you feel if their partners broke into the house, kicked the door in, beat them up, took their stuff?
That would hurt real bad.
What happens with you when you struggle with these relationships? What seems to be the driving issue?
Well, my last relationship, it was like it was a different situation, and I'm not trying to make anything I make a excuse or an exception for anything I did, but it was I was just informed about something that she so I'm just gonna be transparent. I was told that she had
Oh, we have that information. We have that
okay.
already. So we know what that particular reason was. But I mean, you didn't have to handle it by breaking into her house and beating her up. I mean, you could have had a conversation with her and asked. I mean, you know what I mean? With those concerns, you could have gone to the health department in advance and gotten checked out, and you could have done lots of other things instead of kicking the door in, because you heard that. Yeah. And yeah, you could have used protection. And the other thing is you found out that there wasn't anything.
Yeah.
You hadn't contracted anything. If you just could have avoided all of that by just getting checked out if you had concerns about it. And then if you did have something, you would have just reported it, and the health department would have taken care of dealing with it on the other end. So so those are my really big concerns with you. You didn't do that kind of thinking, and I'm hoping that you have learned some stuff from what you've taken, your domestic violence and Voices program. And Voices really kind of, even though you talked about dealing with anger, for me, Voices really deals with more of the impact of your actions on victims, and the community and other elements that are affected by the things that you do. And domestic violence, although I'm sure there's an anger management component to it, should focus on establishing positive relationships and how you do that and what's a good relationship and how you handle yourself and what are your triggers, those kinds of things, and not a lot on, I'm sure there's anger management touched upon, but not really specifically looking at what are the driving factors for you when it comes to your anger, because you're an angry person, the things that you've done. And you just said you wouldn't wish this on your sister.
Not at all.
So I mean, I think for yourself, you need to figure out what that is, so that you need to man up. That's one of the things you need to do, right? You need to really look at it. You're not supposed to put your hand on anybody, in a relationship, absolutely, whoever your partner is. And I'm hoping that, that you'll take the time that you have, whatever happens today, and that you get yourself in some sort of anger management program. And really seriously look at it, alternatives to violence, something that really helps you kind of connect with what are the driving factors in you being such an angry person. Because you said it a couple of times when you're talking to the parole officer and some of the things that we've read, that this is who you are. Yeah. And you were young when this happened. I get it. This was a couple of years back and you were young when these things happen, but you can't do this. This is unacceptable.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to pass it on to my colleagues, and if I have any additional questions, I'll come back to ask. Thank you for answering my questions,
You're
and
welcome.
I wish you a lot of luck, Mr. Piper.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Sosowskis.
I don't have any questions.
Okay. So, Mr. Piper, as my colleague just pointed out, you're a young man. You were 23 when you committed this most recent crime. And by 23, you already had victimized 2 women in your intimate partner relationships. Do you see yourself as the common denominator in this scenario?
Yeah.
Okay. So, did you grow up in a situation where you witnessed domestic violence?
No, I never really witnessed domestic violence growing up.
Okay. All right. I feel pretty confident that your mother taught you to respect women.
Yes.
So you have a child in common with the victim you were on probation for the assault 3 for when you committed the burglary. And that runs through the year 2049. Do you understand what a protective order means?
Yes, ma'am.
While you were on probation, did you participate in the Explore program?
When I was on probation, you mean for when I was on probation recently?
Before you committed the burglary 3rd?
Yeah, I was supposed to start the Explore program, but I didn't have a state ID. And when I went to my probation officer to get one printed out, but when I went to the program to use it, they said I can't use it. I need a actual a physical ID. And when I went to the DMV, they gave me a date to go, and it was I'd say like 2-3 weeks into the future. And by that time, I guess they said they had to close my case with the program, and that went back to my probation.
Okay, so you never fully engaged in the program, probably never even did the initial interview because you weren't responsible enough to have a state issued ID. Have you fixed that situation, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Because you went out to probation in 2023, right? After
Yes.
the 11 months that was execution suspended. So you probably went out the end of 2022, and within less than a year, you were back on the first violation of probation, and now you have a second violation of the same period of probation. And a second victim on top of that. So how long were you with the victim initials AJ before this burglary?
I believe 8 months, 8 or 9 months.
So you really hadn't gotten to know each other all that well, I'm assuming. That's a short period of time.
Yeah, it's a short period.
So what do you take away from all of this? What were your lessons learned?
My lessons learned are that's a good question. Can I get like a couple seconds to like gather my thoughts, please?
Absolutely.
Okay, my lessons learned from this, what I take back from all, not just this situation, but every situation is get to know somebody and about them before you not submit yourself to them, but before you like give yourself
Lay
to
down
them.
with them.
Yes, before you lay down with them. And don't just act off of impulse, because no matter how I was feeling, I know I made her feel worse. And I probably made all of them feel worse. And just as you grow up, just keep. I just gotta always just. Um, sorry,
You're doing fine.
Yeah.
I just the big takeaway is just keep it together and use my mind before I do anything, and I can talk to people.
That
Sorry.
uncomfortable feeling where your emotions are really intense and it's usually feels like anger, it passes really quickly.
Yeah.
You just breathe through it and let your mind take over instead of, like you're saying, acting on the impulse. I'm really happy for you, sir, that you got to get to know whoever you're starting a relationship with. You got to build trust. It takes time. And once that trust is built, then your partner will feel like they can share the difficult information with you. And that you can respect the information, not go spreading rumors and disrespecting them on social media and whatever. But the honesty, and the trust go hand in hand, but the trust comes first. The honesty helps build the trust, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So it turns out that what you were told or thought about this person and their medical condition wasn't at all true, right? So
Yes.
where did you hear this nasty rumor?
I had heard it from a third party, but when I confronted her about it, she told me it was true though. I heard it from her own mouth. We did
Okay,
have a
well, okay, but let me just, so you were willing to listen to somebody else about information pertaining to the person that you were dating. Okay, so, and the other thing that I want to bring into this, Mr. Piper, is that in the police report that we have about the incident in 2023, they detail that it's the third incident since May where you had assaulted her. So, when you disrespect and abuse or actually put your hands on your partner in violence, in anger, it's very hard for them to feel like they can share with you important information, because really this early on in a relationship, for there to be this much, violence from you, I mean, she could be nothing but afraid of you. So she's not going to put out information that is going to probably result in you being even more abusive and violent. So obviously you've taken the Understanding Domestic Violence program, and now you're going to go out, and you're going to need to take the Explore program. Do you think it's something that could help you?
Yeah, I honestly feel like I can take a couple programs that help me, but the Explore program is definitely a program I probably need to take.
Not even probably. You have 2 victims, sir, at the age of 23. Now you're 26. It's time to step up and own your behavior and your choices and how you treat your partners. You know,
Mhm.
what I really want you to learn about is strangulation. Because your last partner, you put your hands around her throat and squeezed. And in our state, we have a separate law against strangulation. Some people call it choking, but that's really when, you know, there's something stuck in your throat. So it's a high risk situation in which, without intending to, you could actually kill a person, because you never know how much or how little pressure you put on somebody's throat could kill them, could break the hyoid bone in the throat. It could cause internal swelling that hours later, like a bruise inside, can cut off their airway. It's a very serious act to put your hands around the throat of another person or animal.
And can I just add, Madam Chair, that just because you think it wasn't strangulation, and you didn't, the victim, I'm sure, felt it as if it was strangulation.
Well, there was descriptions about the impact on her speaking
Yeah.
voice and how it felt afterwards. So it's internal swelling and bruising that you wouldn't see, you wouldn't know about, but police are trained, and you know, if her voice is altered by the injuries, she needs immediate medical attention to ensure that her airway stays open and she stays alive. So the child that you have in common with the previous victim, do you have any contact?
Yes,
Okay. And you're doing that from inside the facility?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Because there is a standing criminal protective order. Is it a full no contact order?
No, I don't believe it is, but I contact my son's grandmother to speak to him.
Okay.
So my baby's mother's mom, I contact her to get in contact
I
with her.
understand what you were saying. Okay. Be really careful. Make sure, find out when you start working with your probation or parole officer, find out whether the order is a full no contact order or just a partial order preventing you from acting violently and abusively towards her before you step in it because you want access to your child. Okay. Do you have contact
Okay.
with the other 2 kids?
Yes, I have contact with my daughter through DCF, and my firstborn, I have contact with him through his mother.
You got a lot of responsibility on your shoulders for someone as young as you are.
Yeah, I know.
You know, and that's also another concern. I mean, you know, you already have 3 children and you were willing to have unprotected sex with someone you were dating for less than 8 months. You know, you got to think about what's realistic in your life for really being a dad and providing for your kids before you make more.
Right.
What are your life goals, Mr. Piper?
So my life goals is I just want to take care of I want to be happy and be able to take care of my kids and just spend as much time with them as I can. And like another life goal I have is I'm really into music, and I do comedy. I really like making people laugh. So like my life goals is to take that up, you know, like social media is like a big thing that I could like try to like put a lot of my of like my content around the world. So whether it be music or comedy. But
Those
my
are great outlets, sir. They really are. It'll tap into your creativity, but it's very hard to make money at. So
Right.
I'm going to encourage you to think about those as hobbies and
Mhm.
interests and ways to, further your happiness in the world.
Mhm.
But you need an income. You have children to support.
Yes, ma'am.
So, what's your plan in terms of employment?
My mom has a friend who she's a manager at a Dunkin' Donuts, and she says
That's right. You did say. I'm sorry. I did write that down. And a warehouse otherwise.
Yep.
And a lot of young people have more than one job. And with the responsibilities you have financially to provide for your kids, it's something to keep yourself open to. When you say you want to take care of your kids, I'm going to encourage you to think about supporting your children being successful in life. And one of the keys to success in life is an education. And I'm very concerned for you, Mr. Piper, that you don't have a GED.
Yeah.
And, you are their example. And if you value education because you go back to school and you get yours, they will value it for themselves.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I hope that your plan includes some serious hard work at adult ed to get your GED. Is there a reason you're not doing school while you're incarcerated? Is it because of all your DRs?
Yeah, that was why. But before I got the DRs, I signed up too, and I was on the waiting list.
Of course, there's wait lists for everything. But
Yeah,
you fall down further in the wait list when you get the damn DRs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the time remaining in your sentence, because you will go out this year, I'd encourage you to create a plan for yourself that looks at everything from your mental health to your employment, where you're going to live, and your hobbies, the things that give you pleasure. But you need to break it down. What you're going to do the first week you're out, the first month, what are you going to accomplish, and put it on paper like you did your opening statement for us, so you have something that will ground you when you're out and there's a million demands on your time and people who want to see you and are inviting you places to do things. You got to keep your focus. You talk about your mom being so important to you.
Yes, ma'am.
This really stood out for me. And maybe you can clarify. So while you were being detained by the police back in June of 2023 in Waterbury, your mother came to the scene. She said she was sick and tired of your behavior and said you were not welcome in her home. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
I think it's really important that you have a talk with your mom. There's some damage that's been done by the choices that you've made that have brought you to prison, that have, that, are about how you were living out in the community. And you need to work on that relationship with her.
Yes.
I would say to you, Mr. Piper, you're very lucky to still have her in your life.
Yes,
And,
ma'am, I know that.
Okay, sir, that's all the questions that I have, and I think the board has. So give us just a few minutes to discuss, and then we'll get back to you. Mr.
Thank you,
Rodriguez.
Madam Chair. I appreciate Mr. Piper's opening statement. He reflected that he has done some work in attending some of the programs that he's been able to attend. But I also share that I have some real concerns. I mean, he took the programming, and no sooner than 2 months later, got into 2 fights. And a big portion of his issues have been his anger. One of the statements he made to the parole officer during his interview was he was blinded by his anger.
That's how bad.
So that's pretty
The intensity of it.
intense that he didn't even realize that a young child was in the room at the time. He was blinded. He didn't see him. And that statement alone concerned me. And that, so, I mean, I would love to give Mr. Piper an opportunity. I think the opportunity that I want to give him is to be able to have some time to, as you mentioned, to put a plan together for himself when he comes out, to give him some opportunity to try to get into an anger management program and really kind of focus in on his anger. Because I do think that he's gotten some things from domestic violence and voices, and combined with the anger management, I think that might really help him. At least when he comes out, he's going to be facing a lot of these issues when he comes out, as you shared, that he's going to have to be able to deal with and handle. And I wouldn't want him to, some reason become blinded by his anger and hurt somebody on the outside and find himself back in here for his benefit. Because I think he's got some real opportunity and some real possible potential. You present well today. And I want to make sure he has the opportunity to do that. And I know it's to November. I'm a denial for today. And I'm not considering a rehear because I think he needs the time to really sit down and plan this thing out and try to get into whatever program. A fatherhood program would help him to some degree. Yeah. So I think there's some additional program that he can take that would really be very helpful. That's kind of where I'm at today.
I understand that completely. It is, it's a quite an ask to think of early release on a 2.5-year sentence for such a violent. I mean, this was originally charged as a home invasion.
Yeah.
And he would have been looking at 20 years. And I feel like a denial is consequence. It's a consequence for what he was doing out in the community. It's a consequence for his 70 Rs during this period of incarceration. It's a consequence for violating his probation. He doesn't have a lot to stand on in terms of his high risk to reoffend, his never being successful on community release. He's had 2 failures and 2 opportunities. And now he has 2 domestic violence victims. He did say when he was interviewed by the parole officer that he thought his sentence was fair. And I think it was fortunate because it was a lot of risk to the community, to these individuals who were trying to share their life with him. I hope he'll do some work on anger because usually with domestic offenders, abusers, it's a matter of deep insecurity, low self-esteem. And I'm glad he's got interest in hobbies and a commitment to his children. And he really needs to build his own sense of his own self-worth and his own self-esteem in order to not want to control his partner, because that's the consequence. You feel insecure and you manage those feelings by controlling your partner. And as he said in his opening statement, he knows, you can't control anybody but yourself. Mr. Sosakis, where are you?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we're talking about the statements that parole officer, something else he said in here, at times that can be violent, and he spoke about his unresolved anger and his willingness to do work in the community. He does have anger management on his OAP, so I'm hopeful that maybe he can get that done before he leaves. And I would encourage him to do, as he said, to seek counseling and therapy and anger management out in the community. He has 3 years of probation, so he can use those resources hopefully to get into some of those programs that prevent things like this from happening again. I hope. But for today, it's a denial
Without a reader.
for me.
Okay. All right.
I had nature and circumstances of offense.
Offense on probation.
Offense committed on probation. I had inadequate institutional program, participation in poor institutional adjustment.
Okay, I'm going to go with poor institutional adjustment and not the inadequate program participation, but I'm going to go with an inadequate release plan.
Okay.
He doesn't have a sponsor and he doesn't have a job and he doesn't have an education. So he's got a lot of pieces to put together in a plan to be successful and to keep his focus when he's back in the community. All right, so in the matter of Gordon Piper, inmate number 435011, there is a motion to deny parole for the following reasons: the nature and circumstance of your offense being committed while you were on probation, your poor institutional adjustment during this period of incarceration, and your inadequate release plan. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So, Mr. Piper, we couldn't see our way to granting discretionary parole to you today. You will go out to 3 years of probation. We wish you much success. Hope you can keep your focus and keep working on yourself, sir.
Thank you very much.
You have some potential.
Thank you. Am I okay to leave, to step up?
This completes, yes.
You guys have a great day.
Thank you.
This completes the parole hearing for the paper 435011.
And if there's anything we've learned from this parole hearing, it's that the parole board can deny someone when they think they need to send a message. It's a consequence for violating his probation, is what she said. And I don't know why they don't say that when we see the chomos that are up, when we see the worst of the worst that are asking for parole, and Connecticut will talk themselves into it. Well, we want him to have supervision. Well, I don't know what more he can get done at this parole hearing. And it's like, wait, that's not true. One is he has probation for supervision, or two is what about retribution, or what about it being a consequence of your actions? And that's, ladies and gentlemen, Mandalorians, boys and girls, let's remember these hearings for when they make those excuses with the other ones, when there are victims that just cried their eyes out. Well, here's proof. You can make the right decision. And I do think this was the right decision. It's an interesting hearing. Let's go over what Lady Holly has on this case, but a few things I want to get off my mind. One is what was very different about this. It was almost like a Louisiana hearing, right? He had like the Southern politeness to him, very different than what we're used to seeing in Connecticut, where there is no proper like courtroom. What's the word I'm looking for? He was very polite. He was, you could tell that he was raised in a home with the strong mother who disciplined him. And you right, you got that from, it was like, and what was interesting too is that you'd expect that he would come from a home where he would see DV, but he said he didn't. And that just so interesting to me, because, and I know it's naive to say this, but I just always assumed that, if you're in a home DV, the odds that you will commit DV, I think, are high. It's a DV can often be done when you don't want to do it, you don't want to hit, but it's so ingrained in you as a child. It's something that you would do without even knowing that you're doing it. I think you guys all know how I feel about DV. I did not come from a home with DV in it, but I have people whom I'm close to who have, and it's of course, and many of you watching this have it. It's of course, just horrible. And in this case, it's just so interesting that he is committing all this violence, and it seems that he comes from a home with a strong mother who doesn't tolerate it. And I love hearing that she came to the scene and put her foot down. I don't know. It's like the whole nature versus nurture thing. I just don't. It fascinates me. We see cases where you have twin brothers, and one is the worst of the worst, the other is doing great. And it's so interesting. But let's jump to Lady Holly's fact of the day of Australia. She started to put it in her sheets. I think it's awesome. So we'll just skip to it. So she says, nothing in the news, but fun fact. If you move to Australia, you can live in some of our awesomely named towns, such as Useless Loop, Bong Bong, Mount Buggery, Humpy Bong, or Eggs and Bacon Bay. Oh, or Boing, Boing? Boing, oh, Boing Boing. Who does name these? These are interesting names. I don't know. If I had to pick, that Useless Loop, Bong Bong, Mount Buggery, Humpy Bong, Eggs and Bacon Bay. Eggs and Bacon Bay? I don't know. I think Boing Boing is just kind of funny. So, all right. So he has here his latest admission, 6/21/2023, right? He gets like a 2-year sentence, 2 years, 6 months. He has parole eligibility pretty quickly. He's getting out anyways, 12/20/2025. So it's like another 9 months to want to sit there and think about what he did. But then you look at his offensive 2018, assault third, failure to appear, violation of probation. It's also, he says he's not on drugs, right? And it's like, I wonder if he was telling the truth. Like, what is it that is getting him so angry? Offense date 6/7/2023. This is burglary third. He's very lucky they did burglary third because it could have been the home invasion. Assault third, and that was it. Was that? I mean, I guess he had some other things in there that's not on his record that they were talking about. It seems he has a history of DV and just anger. He's got to tap into and figure out what it is that is making him so angry. You got to find that root cause so you can start working on it. And anyways, it's I hope we don't see him again. I hope he does do well. And hey, at least he's lucky he didn't walk away with the gift that keeps on giving, if you know what I mean. With that, I'll let you go.
While you were being detained by the police back in June of 2023 in Waterbury, your mother came to the scene. She said she was sick and tired of your behavior and said you were not welcome in her home. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
I think it's really important that you have a talk with your mom. There's some damage that's been done by the choices that you've made that have brought you to prison, that have, are about how you were living out in the community. And you need to work on that relationship with her.
Yes.
I would say to you, Mr. Piper, you're very lucky to still have her in your life.
Yes,
And,
ma'am. I know that.